I was 23 years old the first time I really understood, that the sky could kill you just as easily as the ground. That understanding didn't come in a classroom or in some carefully staged training exercise. It came on June 19th, 1944, over the Philippine Sea, when the sky filled with Japanese aircraft and there was nowhere left to run. But to make sense of that day, you have to understand what came before it. Nobody wakes up one morning ready to kill another man at 300 miles per hour. You get there one step at a time, without noticing how far you've gone until it's already too late to turn back. I grew up in San Diego, close enough to the coast that the smell of salt was just part of life. My father worked at Consolidated Aircraft long before anyone called it Convair, back when most people in town still thought airplanes were novelties instead of weapons. He wasn't a pilot. He built things, riveted metal, ran cables, checked tolerances. He came home with oil under his fingernails and aluminum dust in his hair. I used to sit at the kitchen table while he talked about wing spars and engine mounts, even though I barely understood what he meant. What I understood was that airplanes mattered to him, that they were serious things, built carefully, because mistakes in the air didn't forgive anyone. By the time I was 10, I could name every American fighter and bomber in service. I built model planes in the garage, hanging them from the ceiling with fishing lines so they looked like they were flying. I read aviation magazines cover to cover until the pages fell out. When Lindbergh flew across the Atlantic, my father told the story like it was scripture. Flying, to me, wasn't about glory. It was about machines doing something they weren't supposed to be able to do, and men trusting those machines with their lives. Before the war, my life was simple. I worked at a cannery after graduating high school, saving money for college. I thought maybe I'd study engineering, follow my father into aircraft manufacturing. I didn't have big dreams, just steady ones. December 7th, 1941, killed those dreams as cleanly as a bullet. I remember hearing the radio announcement about Pearl Harbor in the break room at work. The room went silent. Nobody spoke. Someone turned the radio off like that would make it untrue. It didn't. I enlisted 3 weeks later, 19 years old, skinny, full of confidence I hadn't yet earned. I told my mother I wanted to fly. She cried the way mothers cry when they know arguments won't matter. My father shook my hand. He didn't tell me to be careful. He said, "Make it count." I didn't understand then how heavy that sentence would become. Flight training started at NAS Pensacola in February of 1942. The Navy wasted no time. We were rushed through ground school, aerodynamics, engine theory, navigation, gunnery. Everything came fast, faster than it should have, because the war didn't wait for anyone to be ready. There were more students than instructors, more planes than spare parts, and not enough time to fix either problem. We learned to fly in stages. First came the basics: takeoffs, landings, stalls, spins. You learned early that panic killed pilots faster than mechanical failure. If you froze, you died. Simple as that. We lost men during training, not in combat, not with any ceremony, just crashes in empty fields or into the Gulf when someone misjudged a turn or clipped a wing. One boy from Ohio stalled on final approach and went straight in. They pulled him out of the wreckage in pieces. We flew again that afternoon. That was when I learned the first real rule of aviation in wartime. You do not dwell on the men who don't make it. You don't speculate. You don't ask why him and not you. Because the moment you start asking, you lose focus. And the sky punishes distraction without mercy. Carrier qualification was the hardest part. Landing on a moving deck felt like trying to land on a postage stamp in the middle of a storm. The first time I came in too high, the LSO waved me off so hard I thought his arms would tear off. The second time I came in too low, I nearly clipped the stern. When I finally caught a wire, the jolt rattled my teeth and left my hands numb. I climbed out of the cockpit shaking, knowing I could do it, but also knowing it only took one mistake to fail permanently. I earned my wings in November of 1942. They pinned them on my chest during a short ceremony that felt both proud and unfinished. No speeches about heroism, no illusions, just a reminder that now I was expected to use what I'd learned to kill people I'd never met. They assigned me to VF-16, forming up at North Island. That was where I met Eddie Sorensen, Nebraska farm kid, tall, broad-shouldered, with an easy laugh that never quite fit the situation. He'd flown crop dusters before the war, said it made Navy planes feel civilized. We clicked immediately. In the air, he was steady. On the ground, he was calm in a way that made other people calm too. You learn quickly which men you trust with your life. Eddie was one of them. We trained first on the F4F Wildcat. Stubby, underpowered, built like a brick. It could take punishment, but it wasn't fast and it wasn't elegant. Against a Zero, the Wildcat was at a disadvantage in every turning fight. Our instructors drilled that into us relentlessly. Never turn with a Zero, they said. Dive away, use speed, use teamwork. The Wildcat taught us humility. Then in early 1943, everything changed. The F6F Hellcat arrived like an answer to a prayer nobody had dared to say out loud. Bigger, heavier, louder. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine shook the air when it started, a deep animal growl that felt reassuring. The Hellcat didn't dance like a Zero. It punched. It could absorb damage, keep flying with holes in its wings and oil streaking down the fuselage. 6 50-caliber machine guns gave you confidence that bordered on arrogance if you weren't careful. Lieutenant Commander Paul Bouy, our squadron CO, gathered us the first day we flew the Hellcats. He was a veteran already, older than most of us, eyes that had seen things he didn't talk about. He didn't sugarcoat anything. The Zero will outturn you, he said, tapping the chalkboard. So don't try to be a hero. You get above them. You dive. You fire. You extend. Boom and zoom. That's how you live long enough to go home. I wrote those words down in my notebook. I carried them with me. I repeated them in my head before every mission. They became muscle memory. And later, over the Philippine Sea, they kept me alive. We shipped out to Pearl Harbor in April of 1943. USS Lexington was just coming out of dry dock, repaired and upgraded after Coral Sea. The crew treated her like a living thing. Lady Lex, they called her, a floating city of steel, fuel, bombs and men, all moving together across the Pacific. Living aboard a carrier stripped life down to essentials. Sleep when you could, eat when told, work until you dropped. Privacy didn't exist. Fear was constant, but unspoken. The flight deck was the most dangerous place I'd ever seen. Props spinning inches from men's heads, arresting cables snapping with enough force to kill if you were in the wrong place. Ordnance crews moving bombs like they were groceries, knowing one mistake would end everyone nearby. We called it the Steel Beach, half joking, half serious. Our first combat mission came in August of 1943, a strike on Marcus Island. Launching before dawn, engines roaring, deck lights dimmed. My hands shook so badly I thought the deck crew would notice. Eddie flew on my wing. He gave me a thumbs up as we lifted off into the dark. The ocean below was black and endless. The sky slowly lightened as we approached the target. When the flak came up, black bursts hanging in the air, something inside me went cold. This wasn't training. This was real. But no Zeros appeared that day. We returned to Lexington with bombs dropped, mission complete. Adrenaline still buzzing through our veins. Back in the ready room, Eddie slapped my shoulder and said, "See? Easy." I nodded, but my mouth tasted like metal and my stomach felt hollow. I didn't sleep that night. That was just the beginning. After Marcus Island, the war stopped being something abstract and became routine. That was the most dangerous shift of all. Fear, when it's constant, stops feeling sharp. It dulls. You wake up, fly, land, eat, sleep, and do it again, until killing and almost being killed feels like just another job requirement. That's how men survive long wars. That's also how they lose parts of themselves without noticing. We flew strikes across the Central Pacific, through late 43 and early 44. Tarawa, Kwajalein, Eniwetok, Truk. Names that meant nothing to me before the war and everything afterward. Each island was the same in some ways. Blue water, green land, black smoke, but different enough to keep you from feeling comfortable. Anti-aircraft fire varied. Japanese pilots varied. Your luck varied. The ready room became a second home. It smelled like sweat, coffee, cigarette smoke, and fear nobody admitted to. We sat on folding chairs or sprawled on the floor, helmets between our boots, listening to intelligence briefings delivered in flat, practiced voices, target locations, expected resistance, estimated enemy aircraft, casualty projections, Never phrased as such, but implied in every sentence. The waiting was worse than the flying. In the air you reacted. On the ground you thought. You had time to imagine what could go wrong. Time to picture your engine failing over water, or a shell coming through the canopy. Time to wonder whether today was the day your luck ran out. Some men handled it by talking constantly. Others withdrew. A few prayed. Nobody judged. We all needed something to get through the hours before launch. Eddie used humor. Bad jokes, exaggerated stories about farm life in Nebraska. He'd talk about corn harvests and county fairs while we strapped on parachutes and Mae West life vests. It worked, at least a little. I developed rituals. I checked my plane personally whenever possible, even when the crew chiefs told me everything was fine. I touched the silver dollar my father had given me before every flight. I tightened my harness in the same order, every time. Superstition masquerading as discipline, but it kept my hands steady. The Hellcat proved itself over and over. We took hits and brought planes back that should have fallen out of the sky. I saw wings peppered with holes, tail sections torn up, engines leaking oil like open wounds. The Zero pilots were good, some of them excellent, but their planes couldn't absorb punishment. A short burst from our 650s could turn them into debris. That didn't make killing easier. The first time I saw a Zero disintegrate under my fire, I felt a rush I wasn't proud of, relief more than joy. He was dead instead of me. That calculation was unavoidable. Later, when things slowed down, the image came back to me. The suddenness of it. 1 second a man was flying, the next he was gone. No transition, no goodbye. Losses became numbers in briefings, but they weren't numbers to us. Every empty chair in the ready room was a man we'd known. Sometimes we watched a pilot go down, saw the plane hit the water, and waited for a parachute that never appeared. Sometimes the ocean stayed empty. Those were the worst moments. No closure, just absence. By early 1944, we were tired in a way sleep didn't fix. 8 months at sea wore you down physically and mentally. Salt air rusted everything, including nerves. Letters from home arrived sporadically, often weeks old. Life continued without us, frozen in black and white photographs and careful handwriting. The Navy pressed forward anyway. Island hopping worked. The Japanese were retreating, but they weren't beaten. Every mile west brought us closer to their home islands and closer to their desperation. Intelligence reports grew more ominous. Larger formations, new tactics, rumors of suicide attacks, dismissed at first as exaggerations. In May, we heard the name Philippine Sea more and more. Briefings referenced Japanese carrier movements, concentrations of aircraft. The officers spoke carefully, but the meaning was clear. Something big was coming. USS Lexington felt different in those weeks. The crew drilled harder. Damage control teams practiced sealing compartments until they could do it blindfolded. Ordnance crews worked around the clock. Pilots were briefed, debriefed, and briefed again. The word decisive floated through conversations like a bad omen. On June 17th, we launched long-range search missions. Planes disappeared into the western horizon and came back hours later, low on fuel, pilots exhausted. That afternoon, confirmation arrived. The Japanese fleet was out there, hundreds of miles away, waiting. That night, nobody pretended anymore. The ready room was quiet in a way I'd never heard before. No jokes, no card games. Men smoked in silence or stared at the deck. Eddie sat beside me, cleaning an already clean pistol he never carried in flight. He looked up and said, "You ever think about what happens if we don't stop them?" I didn't answer right away. "We stop them," I said finally. He nodded, not convinced, but accepting the answer. That was Eddie. He didn't dwell on hypotheticals. He focused on what needed doing. I lay in my rack later, listening to the hum of the ship, the distant thump of machinery. Sleep didn't come. I kept seeing the flight deck engulfed in fire, planes burning, men running. I pushed the images away. Thinking like that didn't help. Tomorrow would be busy enough. At 500, the klaxon sounded. General quarters. The day we'd been waiting for had arrived. June 18th, 1944 bled into the early hours of the 19th without any real separation. The ship never truly slept. Lights dimmed, voices lowered, but the machinery kept moving, and so did our thoughts. The ocean around us was calm, deceptively so, as if it had no intention of witnessing what was about to happen above it. In the ready room, the final briefings were delivered with a level of seriousness that cut through whatever denial anyone still carried. Intelligence officers stood at the front, maps pinned to boards, grease pencils circling projected enemy routes, Japanese carrier groups, estimated aircraft counts, expected altitude profiles, probable attack vectors. The numbers were large enough to make you pause. 400 enemy aircraft. Nobody whistled, nobody laughed, someone coughed, that was it. Bai addressed us after the briefing. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't try to inspire us with talk of duty or destiny. He told us exactly what he expected. They're going to come in waves, he said. They'll try to draw us down, then push bombers through at altitude. Do not chase. Stay with your wingman. Protect the fleet. If they get through us, this turns into a slaughter on the deck. We all knew what that meant. Fuel, bombs, tightly packed aircraft. One good hit could cripple a carrier. Two could kill her. After the briefing, I walked the flight deck alone. It was something I'd started doing before big missions. The deck was quiet except for a few deckhands on watch. Rows of Hellcats sat chained down, their wings folded like resting birds. I found my plane, number 14, and rested a hand on the fuselage. San Diego rose, I said softly. I wasn't religious, but talking to the plane felt right. If it was going to carry me through hell tomorrow, it deserved acknowledgement. Eddie found me there. Figured you'd be out here, he said. Couldn't sleep. Me neither. We leaned against the railing and looked out at the dark water. Somewhere beyond the horizon, men just like us were doing the same thing, preparing, checking their planes, thinking about home. The difference was that tomorrow, one of us would be wrong. You ever think about what you'll do after this? Eddie asked. If I get back? When? I shrugged. Work with airplanes, I guess. Something quiet. He nodded. I'll go back to the farm. If there's anything left of it. He smiled faintly. Corn doesn't shoot back. We stood there a while longer, then went below. At some point, exhaustion won. I slept in fragments, waking to the hum of the ship, the echo of imagined engines. At 04:30, the call came. Pilots to the flight deck. The morning of June 19th was clear, the kind of clear pilots dream about. High visibility, calm seas. The sun crept over the horizon, turning the water gold. It was almost obscene how beautiful it was. The deck erupted into controlled chaos. Engines starting, deck crews shouting hand signals, ordnance crews finalizing loads. I climbed into my cockpit, strapped in, and ran the checklist by muscle memory. Fuel full, oil pressure steady, guns charged, everything where it needed to be. Eddie taxied up beside me. He gave me a thumbs up. I returned it. The catapult shot me forward in a blur of noise and acceleration. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but sky and water. Then the Hellcat caught air and I was climbing. We formed up quickly, flight circling the task force. Below us, 15 carriers spread across miles of ocean, flanked by battleships and cruisers. It was the most powerful fleet ever assembled, and yet it felt fragile. All that steel, all those men, dependent on us holding the sky. We climbed to Angels 15 and settled into our patrol. The radio crackled constantly. Status reports, altitude checks, calm voices masking tension. The sun rose higher, heat building in the cockpit. Sweat trickled down my back. Time stretched. At 09:58, the call came. Bogies inbound. Bearing 270, distance 60 miles. Multiple contacts. This was it. I tightened my grip on the stick. Eddie's voice came over the intercom, steady but serious. All right, Tommy. Same as always. Same as always. The dots appeared on the horizon not long after. Tiny, almost harmless-looking specks that grew rapidly. The rising sun caught their wings, red circles flashing like warnings. Zeros. Behind them, the bombers followed. Bai's voice cut through the radio. All Hellcats, engage. Protect the fleet. I pushed the nose down and rolled into the dive. The dive erased thought. The moment Bui gave the order, training took over and everything else vanished. The horizon tilted, the ocean rushed up to meet us, and the Hellcat howled as gravity pulled it forward. Airspeed climbed past 300 miles per hour. The controls stiffened. The world narrowed to engine noise, vibration, and the sight of enemy aircraft swelling in my gun sight. The Zeros scattered as we came down. They'd seen us. They always did. Their formation broke apart, each pilot choosing his own angle of attack or escape. That was their strength and their weakness, individually brilliant, collectively vulnerable. I picked one climbing hard, trying to meet me head-on. Rookie mistake or desperation? I never knew which. I centered the pipper on his nose and squeezed the trigger. The Hellcat shook violently as all 6 50-caliber Brownings opened up. Tracers streamed out in tight lines. For a split second, nothing happened. Then sparks danced across the Zero's cowling. His canopy shattered outward, and the plane snapped into a violent roll, flipping inverted before spiraling down toward the water. I didn't follow him. You never followed them down. That was how you died. I pulled up hard, the G-forces crushing me into the seat, black creeping in at the edges of my vision. I leveled out at 10,000 feet, scanning wildly. The sky was chaos. Aircraft everywhere, smoke trails arcing and twisting, tracers crossing like intersecting lines of fire. A Zero flashed past my left wing, so close I could see the red paint worn thin along the leading edge. I rolled after him, fired a short burst, missed. He turned inside me effortlessly. I felt the instinct to turn with him claw at my hands. Don't. I pushed the nose down instead, diving away, trading altitude for speed. The Zero couldn't follow. I pulled out, climbed back up, and re-entered the fight from above. "Tommy, check 6. Eddie's voice cut through the noise just as tracers snapped past my canopy. I broke hard right, then left, violent enough to make my vision blur. The Zero overshot, unable to match the Hellcat's dive speed. "I got him," Eddie said. A second later, a stream of tracers tore into the Zero. The aircraft came apart mid-air, wings separating, fuselage breaking, debris tumbling into the blue below. I didn't thank him. There was no time. The Japanese bombers were pressing forward now, trying to push through the collapsing fighter screen. I saw Vals beginning their dives, noses pointed straight down, wings vibrating as they picked up speed. Flak erupted from the fleet below, black bursts surrounding them. I dove on a Val, firing from above and behind. My rounds walked up his fuselage into the cockpit. The bomber jerked violently, rolled, and disintegrated before it reached its release point. Below, a destroyer took a near miss. Water columns rose higher than her superstructure. She kept moving. The radio was a mess. Shouts, warnings, fragments of call signs cut off mid-sentence. Somewhere in that noise, men were dying. Wave after wave came in. The Hellcats tore into them again and again. We were outnumbered on paper, but not in practice. The sky filled with falling Japanese aircraft. Some exploded, some burned all the way down, some simply stopped flying. Still, a few got through. I saw torpedo bombers skimming the waves, lined up on the carriers. Hellcats dove on them mercilessly. 3 went into the water in quick succession. 1 launched its torpedo anyway. I watched it run straight and true, then pass harmlessly behind a carrier's wake. Then I saw them, a tight group of Zeros, 8, maybe 10, diving straight toward Lexington. They were disciplined, focused. These weren't rookies. "All units defend Lady Lex," Bai's voice barked. I pushed the throttle to the firewall. The engine screamed. Airspeed climbed. The Zeros were already fast, already committed. The lead Zero rolled into his attack dive, lined up on the flight deck. If he got through, it would be catastrophic. I closed the distance. 400 yards, 300, 200. At 150, I opened fire. The tracers struck his left wing root. The wing folded instantly. The Zero cartwheeled into the ocean in a spray of foam and debris. The second Zero filled my windscreen. I fired again. His engine exploded, flame and smoke erupting outward. He fell away trailing black. The formation shattered. 2 broke left. 2 broke right. 1 stayed too long. He tried to turn with me. I climbed, rolled, and came down on him from above. 1 clean burst. The Zero disintegrated. "That's 3, Eddie shouted. "I'm 4. I yelled back. And then Eddie screamed. "I'm hit. Engine seizing." I saw his Hellcat trailing white smoke, losing altitude. My stomach dropped. "Bail out," I shouted. "Now!" His canopy blew off. He climbed onto the wing, hesitated for half a second that felt like a year, and jumped. The parachute opened. Relief surged through me, then turned instantly to rage. A Zero swung around, lining up on Eddie as he drifted helplessly. I didn't think. I dove. The Hellcat screamed past redline. The controls shook violently. I ignored it. I closed fast, faster than the Zero expected. At point-blank range, I opened fire. All 6 guns. Continuous burst. The Zero's cockpit vanished in a cloud of fragments. The plane rolled once, then plunged straight into the sea. No shoot. I circled Eddie until I saw a destroyer turning toward him. He was alive. That was all that mattered. Fuel warnings flashed. Ammo counters were low. The sky was clearing. The Japanese were gone. The battle was over. I limped back to Lexington on fumes, deck cluttered with damaged aircraft and debris. I caught the wire hard and rolled to a stop. When I shut down the engine, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. They told us later we'd shot down more than 300 enemy aircraft. They called it a victory. I called it survival.